Okay, so we are going to learn Java and Selenium. So the primary thing in learning Java and Selenium is Java. If you don't know Java, if you don't know the concepts of object-oriented programming, then it's tough because everybody knows, I hope everybody knows what for loop is, what if statement is, right? But the problem is this learning object-oriented programming, oops. And that's what I'm going to focus on. Because if you actually look at the Selenium website as well, right? If you go to the official website of Selenium, which is seleniumhq.org, right? So out here, if you want, like everybody who wants to learn Selenium definitely visits this site. The first line says that Selenium automates browsers, right? And it's a automation testing tool which is only meant for browsers, right? And if you click on this download section, then out here, this is the Java link and this is the download Java doc for this Java. And if you look at this Java documentation, this is actually the documentation available for Selenium in Java. And you cannot understand this documentation until or unless you have the concepts of object-oriented programming ready with you. And that's what we will be starting off with. Fine. Now, the first thing, hold on, right. The first thing is installing Java. Obviously, look, the thing is, these Selenium guys also suggest you to install Java 8. Okay, so please install Java 8 in your PC. Okay, go to Google and just search for JDK 8. Okay, install JDK 8. JDK is Java Development Kit. Fine, please install this for your operating system. Right, don't install JRE, install JDK. Fine, next thing is obviously Eclipse, which most of you must be having. Right, I'm just going through the basics. For Eclipse, you can write download Eclipse. Eclipse is the editor for Java language, and you can simply download Eclipse from here, Eclipse downloads. Hold on, let it open. So you can download and configure Eclipse from here, and Eclipse will look something like this out here. In my PC, it's right over here. Okay, right. So you start off Eclipse. It will start off as a normal program, any particular software, and it will ask you for the initial path of your workspace. Okay, hold on, let that window come up. Right, so this is the path of workspace. Workspace means the place where you will be writing the code and storing it on your hard drive. Right, there has to be some place, right, where you can store your code on the hard drive, right? So you can mention that over here. Right, now, out here, just a minute, I'll write Selenium weekend, Jan 18, sorry, 19. So this is the location where we will be storing the code. Okay, now, hold on. Let it open. Fine, it takes a little while. So today I will be focusing on object-oriented programming. Today is the first day, it's the introductory day. I won't drag the class a little longer, but I'm going to, focus on oops. Hold on just a minute. All right. So I'll maximize it. It's hanging. Yeah. We can close this welcome screen. Right. Now out here we will have this project explorer, right? And this project explorer, you can create a new under general, you can create a new project, or you can go to under Java, right? You can create a new Java project. Fine. And this, I'll call this Java project as day one. Okay. When you create a Java project, you will see that if you'll see a project like this, which you can expand, and when you expand, you will see JRE system library. This is nothing but Java which is installed on your PC, and this source folder is nothing but the folder in which we will be making all the code and all everything. Okay, if you right click on the project, you will see a lot of options, and we will be using these options, right? If you go to properties option, okay, and if you go to Java build path, so this is Java build path. We will be using this also a lot in our training. This is resource. This tells you the place where the workspace is lying, basically the place where the code is lying, and we will be using this as well a lot during the training. If you click on this button arrow, then that particular location will open up on your PC. Fine. Okay. So now let me just create a new class known as say basics. Fine. Now out here, I hope you know what variables and all are, what integer is. The first thing I will be focusing on is debugging the programs. Right. Suppose like I declare a variable int I equals 200, and then int on the sorry int I equals 200. I know, like I'm assuming that you know the basics, right, of the programming languages, and say there is a string s equals to hello, how are you? Fine. And then I declare a variable int k equals to I multiplied by j. Fine. And then I write a for loop that for int I equals to 0, sorry, for int x equals to 0, x less than say k and x plus plus, and you just print the system.out.println is the command to print something in Java language. Okay. So the shortcut is you type SYSO and hit the control space bar of the keyboard, right? And you just print X over here, and you can run this program. You can run this program from this run button, and it will just execute itself. Okay, right. Now out here, this is basics.java, and this is the main function. Fine. And it has executed. It's printed few lines, right? Now you can actually run it line by line. Okay, you can actually run it line by line, and to do that you have to do debugging, and you can debug it by double clicking in front of this line. If I double click in front of this line, then you will actually uh, have a breakpoint. This blue dot is a breakpoint. Fine. Okay. Now you can click on this debug button. and you will see a window like this, open perspective, right? And you click on this yes icon, and you will see a green mark over here. Now this is a different perspective. I'm telling you this because when you are writing complex programs, right, then um, you know something fails in between and you really don't know what's happening. So at that time, debugging helps us a lot. All right. So you see that this green line represents that the control has stopped on this line. These are the variables which are there in the program right now. Okay. And you can hit F6 of the keyboard, and with F6, you can run it line by line. Fine. And when you run it line by line, you will be able to see the values of the variables at runtime. See, I is assigned the value as 100 and j is assigned the value 200. Even if you move the mouse over I, you will be able to see the variable values. So this is something which will be helpful as a beginner, right? And especially when you build the frameworks and all. Okay. And if you hit F6 again, then another variable will come up S. See, the value of this variable is hello, how are you? And then you can start off with the loop F6, and you can print the numbers one by one. And in real time, you will see the value of X in changing over here in the variables section. If you hit F6, F6 again and again, see the value of X, you can see that it is increasing, right, in the variables section. So F6 will run the program line by line. And if you hit F8, then it's going to run everything. Okay, it's just going to run like a normal program. Fine. Okay, now out here you can click on Java and you can move back, right? So this is how you can debug the programs, and it's going to help us a lot, and we'll see in some time that how it is going to help us. Now let us go to object-oriented programming. That what objects are, how do we build objects, how objects are important to us, and how we are going to use them in Selenium. Fine. So Java, the primary objective people use is that it is object oriented. Fine. So let me make a new package first under this source folder. Package means a folder inside a folder. Okay. And suppose I'll call this package as OOPS, object oriented programming. Fine. So under the source folder, you will have the OOPS folder, and I will make few classes under this OOPS folder. So I'll make a new class known as, say, Office. So I made a class known as Office. It has got no main function, right? It's a blank class, right? Right. And you can have features of Office, for example, int number of employees, right? String, say, hold on, address, right? So these are two properties of Office, right? Now you cannot run this program, it's got no main function. Okay, fine. So let me make a new class. Hold on, I'll just make a new class known as test.java. And this in this I will be using this Office class. So in one Java class, I am going to use another class, office class. So in this test class, I'm going to use this office class. Fine. Okay. So what I'll go do is that in test class, I'm going to create the object of office class. I'll write office O equals to new office. So I'm using this office class over here. And this is known as object creation. Now what happens is when you create the object, what happens when you create the object? Well, what does this line signify? I'll remove this line, okay, and I'll just write a single simple line known as new office. This means that I am creating the object of the office class. This is creating object of office class, right? And in the memory, right, in the memory, you will have an object created for the office class. That object will have hold on. Yeah, this office will have uh, number of employees and address as two properties. So you will have number of employees and address. Fine. Okay. And you cannot access this object. To access this object, you have to create the object reference of this object. You just cannot access it. It's just lying in the memory, right? Okay. So to create the object, you have to give it an object reference. That is like this. You write office O1 equals to new office. So O1 becomes the reference which will point towards this object. So O1, what it does is it points towards this particular object. Fine. With O1, you can access the object. You can write, say, O1 dot, you will get the properties. Say number of employees are 100 and O1 dot address is, say, India. I'll just put India. Fine. And it's giving me error. Hold on. Okay, I have not saved my office class. That is why. Right. So looking at this object, I have assigned it different properties. Now I can make another object. I can write office O2 equals to new office. Right. And hold on, guys. Just 1 minute. Just 1 minute. Yeah. So office O2 equals to new office and O2 dot, you can write number of employees are 200 and O2 dot address is, say, Russia. So O1 and O2, right? O1 and O2 are two different object references pointing towards two different objects, and you can give the properties, you can assign the properties of every object a different value with the help of object reference. Okay, fine. Now, out here you can print system.out.println, say O1 dot number of employees, and system.out.println O2 dot number of employees. So it will just print number of employees in O1 and O2. Right. So it will print 100 and 200. All right. Fine. Now, if I declare office O3 equals to null, and I declare O3 dot number of employees are 400. O3 equals to null means that O3 is a reference which is not pointing anywhere. Right. All right, which is not pointing anywhere. But I'm assigning a property of O3 as 400. So if I run it, it will print null pointer x. Right. Null pointer means that it's not pointing anywhere and you are trying to assign a value. So exception means that you are somewhere, in the program, right, where you shouldn't have been there, and that caused the program to stop. Okay, fine. Now, just 1 minute, guys. My PC is hanging. Yeah, it's fine now. Now you have to assign it towards an object in order to avoid this exception. So this is important. Null pointer, many times people get it. And the only reason they get it that the object is not initialized. So I'm starting from very basics. These are small errors. When you build a framework in Selenium, you just don't declare any object and simply it goes for a null pointer. Fine. Okay. Now, if I debug this program line by line, if I double click on this line, and if I click on this debug button, then you will get a message like this. Switch perspective. You click on yes and start debugging. So when you click on F6, so you will see the object of O1 created. And when object is created, if you expand this, address and number of employees are null and zero. Address and number of employees haven't been initialized. Right. Okay. Right. Now, if I hit F6 of the keyboard, you will see number of employees initialized to 100 and then address also initialized to India. So similarly, O2 is created. Here is O2. This is how you work in Selenium as well. When you are stuck, you're making objects in Selenium and you can actually run it line by line and see the state of objects. Okay. So you hit F6. F6, you will see address and number of employees. Then you print the number of employees. Then you create O3. Now O3 is null. When O3 is null, that means O3 is not pointing anywhere. And if I run this line, I get a null pointer exception. Okay. In my console, I get a null pointer exception. Right. So this is how you can debug your programs as well. Okay. Now, the thing is, object is different in memory and object reference is different. If I go and write on this line, just a minute, object O3 new office, right? Or I write O1 equals to O2. Yes, this is correct. Now, O1 is pointing towards a different object. Now, O2 is pointing towards a different object. If I write O1 equals to O2, then if I print O1 dot name, O1 dot number of employees, and O2 dot number of employees, right? And run this. See that it's printing 200 and 200 in the end, right? That means O1 is pointing towards O2 now. So O1 and O2 are pointing towards the same object. In the memory, this was O1 pointing, and then we had O2. This was O2. When you write O1 equals to O2, O1 moves from here and points towards O2. So when O1 points towards O2, O1 and O2 will point towards the same object and they will get the same number of employees. If O1 changes the number of employees to say 1000, then it gets updated for every object. So hold on. I print again O1.employee and O2.employee and run it. This will print updated value for both the objects. Since both the object references, are pointing towards same, right? Okay. Now I'll create another class, or let me change this office only. Suppose there is another property in the office class. All right. And that property is, say, int cafeteria, or number of cafeteria, which signifies the number of cafeterias in an office. Okay, right. Or int, fine, this is same, right? Now suppose we have a scenario where the number of cafeterias are equal to 1 for every object I'm creating. O2 also has number of cafeterias as 1. Suppose there is a scenario that no object of office class should have more than one cafeteria, or no office should have more than one cafeteria. So does it make sense that we keep a variable like this and initialize it to 1, right? So what we do is that we don't write it like this. We make this variable as static. So static is something which is common for all the objects. Static is something which will lie in the memory over here, and it will be common for both the objects. Okay, right? You can access the static variable directly with the name of the class. You can write that name of the class office dot number of cafeterias are 1. So every object will have one cafeteria. Okay, right. Now, out here, uh, you can have a function, for example, public void open. So this is a function, right? This function is known as non-static function. This has got no static word. This variable over here is known as non-static variable. This variable also is number of employees and address. Both are non-static variables. This is known as a static variable. A class can have non-static or static. Right. Okay. Fine. All right. You can have a static function as well. You can create a function public. Look, I'm going quite slow. I don't want to confuse you guys. Public static void. Say any function which is common for all the objects. This static function can be accessed directly with the name of the class. But the non-static function open, suppose in open function I'm printing the address of the office, say opening office in and the address, right? And I call that function over here, say o1 dot open, and out here o2 dot open, right? All right. So when you run this, see opening office in India, opening office in Russia. Fine. All right. So that's how it works. So when this open is called, open becomes the part of every object. This object, open is non-static, right? Non-static is part of object. Open will be inside this object, open will be inside this object, right? Okay. So both these open functions be called and they will print the names of number address of respective offices. And if I print this in the end, if I write o1 dot open and o1 o2 dot open over here, then this is going to print the same thing because O1 and O2 are pointing towards same object, which is O2. So if I run this now, and it's going to print opening office in Russia and Russia. So it's printing the same thing, right? I hope you understand the point. And what we do in Selenium, we create objects of existing classes which are present inside Selenium. That's it. Everything in Selenium is inbuilt. Okay, there is nothing which you have to invent. There are inbuilt classes. For example, to open Chrome, there is a class known as Chrome driver. You just create the object of that particular class. This Chrome driver class has been given by Selenium guys. We will use this later on, but I'm just telling you. Just create the object of this class and you can start working with Chrome. So everything is inbuilt, but to use that, you should have the concept, this concept of object-oriented programming. Fine. Okay. So how we will go about? We will go about like this. First, we will learn OOPS, which I've just told you, static and non-static. Then we will learn about exception handling, and then we will learn about inheritance in Java, and then interfaces. And then I can start off with Selenium. Okay, now what is exception handling? I just showed you an exception coming up. Right, it was a null pointer exception. Okay, right. It was a null pointer exception. And um, how do you manage exceptions? Okay, I'll create a new class known as managing exceptions. Right. I'll tell you what happens when exception occurs. Right. Suppose you write over here system.out.println a and int I equals to 100 divided by 2. Right. Okay. So out here, B, and when you run this program, it prints A and B. Right. And now, if I write 100 divided by 0, right, and if I run this, it will simply print A and then arithmetic exception. Right. Okay, but B is not printed. Look carefully. B is not printed. The problem is exception comes up and the program ab abruptly ends. And when the program abruptly ends, that creates please be able to report an error or something. Okay. right? Fine. So how do we do that? We do that with the help of exception handling. We use try and catch block. Okay, and you write catch exception E. Okay, and in the exception block, I'll type inside exception. What will happen? If an exception comes up, then you will see the control going inside the exception block. So when you run this code, it will print A inside exception and B. It did not stop. The control went inside the exception. So when the script is running, you can actually catch it and you can report something over here. If the control is coming in the exception block, that means something is going wrong. If I write 100 divided by 2 and if I run this program, then you see that it prints A and B. It never prints inside exception. Okay. So if something goes wrong, you can report it over here. Right. Now, this is what basic try catch I'm telling you. All right. Fine. Now, you can debug it as well. I'll put a breakpoint on this line. I can run it in the debug mode. And I'll click on yes. And now I will hit F6 of the keyboard and I will try to run it. See, it's printing A and in this console is coming up. You can move it over here. Yeah, you can hit F6 and when you hit F6, the control comes up inside the catch block. Right? Okay, and you hit F8, it will run normally. Okay, now the problem is if I put a system.out.println over here, X, and if I put Y, and if I run this, it will print AX, then inside exception, then B. Y will not be printed. The line on which exception comes up, the control goes inside the catch block, executes, and it carries on. The lines after which the exception has come up in the try block, they are not executed. Okay, if there had been no exception, if I would have written 100 divided by 2 and it would have run very smoothly. Right. Okay. I hope you have got my point. Fine. So today I will only cover this much. Tomorrow I will cover interface inheritance and interfaces. And then from next week I'll start off with Selenium. In the initial classes, I don't take that much because you guys need some time. I can cover all these things today in 1.5 hours or 2 hours, but I don't want to do that. If you have any questions, you can tell me.